sure he'll do it really well.
We think a stereotype is taking an image or an individual person and projecting their characteristics onto a group.
Labeling to me.
Yeah, the judgment of someone based off looks, attributes, without knowing the person.
Yes.
It means to put someone in a certain category and to expect nothing less or nothing more of that person.
So what do I think of stereotypes? I think they were helpful a long time ago when people were like trying to gain as much information as they could to survive. And so people would say, okay, I need to know the stereotype of lion is lion eats person. And if I don't have that stereotype and I just have an open mind to lions, I'm probably in trouble. So I think that's where that evolved from.
It's exhausting.
Yes.
Why don't you kind of focus on yourself?
What do you think of stereotypes? Not a very good thing to do. I myself used to stereotype. I might still do it. I try not to. And it's a bad thing overall.
Logan, are there any stereotypes that come to mind when thinking of the word stereotype? Well, yes. There is the stereotype of children of color in this country. Work at a school that serves mostly children of color. And it's one of the most successful schools in Denver. And when we started it, the biggest criticism of it, as our school had been in a mostly white community.
Oh gosh, it's lots. Especially if you're from a different country, different color.
Speak a different language or... Oh, I see.
The church
a lot of
people
stereotype over religious.
Religious, yeah, the church.
So that's pretty strong. Yeah.
Well, not specifically right now, but you know, give me time. You know, I give me a little time, and a whole lot will come to mind. I mean, that just to add to that alone, stereotypes do come to mind. People think of us in one way, me one way, being African American, I presume. But even then, I don't like to place myself as being stereotype myself to myself.
That's complicated. I think every individual can make the choice about how they want to be labeled. Like, I know Dominican people who I would have identified as black or African American. They would not define themselves that way, and that was really eye-opening for me because in the eyes of a lot of Americans, they would be considered black, but they don't consider themselves that. So everyone has the right to label themselves and identify themselves however they want, or that doesn't necessarily mean that's how they'll be labeled in the media or by a stranger. So I would say yes and no. Labels do have a meaning, but we can all work to overcome them individually and collectively.
Again, exhausting.
probably defines only the person's stereotyping.
Right. They just don't have anything better to do, and I feel sorry for them.
No. Well, well, in some instances, you can say yes. For instance, criminals, a lot of criminals, I guess, get stereotyped, and I don't know. That's a hard thing to determine whether this defines anyone. You know, because people can change.
Sure. I work at a school, as I said, and I actually had a conversation with an African American family the other day, and the father was feeling frustrated with our school and said that, well, he noticed that we don't have very many teachers of color at our school, and said that his son would respond better to a person of color, which I think is maybe true in some or a lot of circumstances. But then he started to kind of make some statements about who I was and what my motivations were for working with his kid that I didn't agree with. And that was frustrating. You know, I understand where he's coming from because of what I represent and what my skin represents. But then as an individual who's like working really hard and really wants the best for his son, that is really frustrating and something I'm not sure like I can control. I can't necessarily control how he feels. And he said it right in front of his son, which, you know, we'll see how that changes the dynamic in our relationship.
Constantly, again, being from a different country, having an accent, but again, just don't listen because it's really all about them, not about you. I know I'm awesome, so I am.
That's good. Moving here from Texas, I even had my vet tell me the very first time I moved here is to tell me that to tell all my friends that it was awful, that too many Texans were here, and to tell none of my friends to come here because it was getting too crowded.
Oh man. Okay. Again, exhausting.
Yeah.
My experience being late. Oh yeah, yes. That's good. I think almost every day, you know, quite a bit. I go through that. We go through that. People go through that. We get labeled. We go to stores. People label, you know, this one, that one. They throw labels on people, and it's not a good thing. I like to give an example, but right now you caught me at a bad time. But I mean, I have tons of an example. I mean, that's really, it's a lot. I mean, just about almost everywhere I go, not almost everywhere, but a lot of places I go, you know, just to look, when people look at me, you know, sometimes they what do you say, marginalize me, you know, as though I'm not there, you know. I mean, just pull it into a parking space, you know. People, if two of us are going into one parking space and I really have the right of way, well, that person generally of another race, being Caucasian, usually a white person, feel as though they should go in, so they should have the privilege. So I've been stereotyped as not being, you know what I mean, as being, what do you say, marginalized. So it was an everyday occurrence almost, you know. That's it.
Thank you.
I hope that's enough.
Hi, my name is Pauline Tabaranza, and I am from New Jersey in the United States of America. What does stereotype mean? To me, stereotype basically means categorizing a group of people based on their image or beliefs, like religion, for example. What do you think of stereotypes? I personally don't like generalizing a group of people just because everyone is different, and I was taught to never judge a book by its cover. Are there any stereotypes that come to mind when thinking of the word? I can't think of one in particular, but I do think of race. I think that that's probably the most common stereotypes that people use. Do labels really define anyone? No. In my opinion, I don't think they do. I think that we all grow up based on not only our culture, but also our experiences and surroundings. So you could have your ancestors be from a totally different country, and you can grow up somewhere else and not have the same morals and values as them. Have you experienced being labeled? Honestly, yes. I get told this every so often that because I am Asian or a Pacific Islander, specifically Filipino, that I am not a good driver. But I will definitely justify myself that I am a pretty good driver. So, with that being said, thank you.
Hello, my name is Corinne Velasco. I am 21 years old. I was born and raised in San Diego, California, and I am first generation Mexican. I met Mary Liz while attending the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. What does stereotype mean? I think a stereotype means any sort of characterization, or rather generalization, based on a person's individual characteristics such as race, gender, or sexual orientation. What do you think of stereotype? I think that stereotypes are often based off some minor aspect of truth, but because they are a generalization of any sort of gender, race, or any other characteristic, that it's impossible for it to be ultimate truth or can be completely taken seriously because it may not always be true for everyone. Are there any stereotypes that come to mind when thinking of the word? The main stereotype that comes to mind is women being emotional or being told that they're crazy, when it could just be some sort of underlining factor that makes them react in a specific way, and it doesn't seem fair to generalize all women to be as such. Does labels really do define anyone? I can't say that labels define anyone, because labels are just what they are. They don't actually mean anything until you put worth into it. And if you take them as a truth, people can call you whatever they want, and it doesn't mean anything. Have you experienced being labeled? Explain your experience. I have been labeled a lot, specifically more in my upbringing. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and as a Mexican, I was definitely treated differently, which is often surprising coming from Southern California. But I grew up in an area called Rancho Bernardo, where people weren't as open-minded and accepting of everyone. I was often corrected on how to say things, including my name. People would often call me Karen when the correct pronunciation is Corinne, because I was named after a German coworker of my parents. For white people to correct you and call you something just based on your appearance was really hurtful. And on the other end of that, being Mexican and then going to a predominantly Mexican neighborhood where my Spanish wasn't 100% perfect, I would be called gringa, which means whitewash, basically. It's kind of derogatory, especially when referring it to someone who is actually Mexican. And there were moments in my life where I definitely took it to heart, and I definitely took things personally. But I learned from those experiences to just be yourself and to take pride in who you are. And no matter what people say about you, you can always prove them wrong.
Hi everyone, my name is Denise. I live in New Jersey, USA, and I'm from Ecuador. And I'm very happy to answer all these questions. What does a stereotype means? A stereotype is basically an opinion you make about a person based on their religion, race, or gender. What do you think of a stereotype? I think a stereotype is a serious problem because it affects society and new generations. Also, it's a problem because a lot of people associate the stereotype with something that is bad, which is true, but there are some good ones too. For example, when they say Asian people are good in math. Are there any stereotype that comes to mind when thinking of the word? Yes, that one that I mentioned before about Asian people are good in math, all women are bad drivers, Irish people are all drunks, and white people can dance. Does labels really do define anyone? No. We all are different, and what really defines us is our actions, what we say, how we treat others, our morals, our values. Who we truly are, it's found the inside, not on your skin color or gender. Have you experienced being labeled? Explain your experience. Yes, I'm Hispanic and a lot of people assume I'm Mexican. One of my classmates in college asked me if I like tequila and tacos. I said yes, why? He said, because you're Mexican, right? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Calvin Murphy, Southern California, America.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vallejos, and I'm from New Jersey in the United States of America, and I am the first generation Filipino American.
Hello, my name is Amanda. I'm 22 years old, and I am from the state of New Jersey in the United States.
I'm Kamisha, and I'm from Texas.
What does stereotype mean? Stereotype can mean an oversimplified idea. Basically, something that is inherited, I guess, due to certain traits or due to certain consequences.
Stereotyping is grouping a person or a group of people together based on things like race, hobbies, appearance.
I think it's a very big misconception based on how a person looks or how a person acts. And I think it's just one of those things that everybody does. We stereotype each other.
Stereotype to me means a particular label that can describe someone based on specific characteristics. So, for example, if someone meets up to the requirements of being an emo, let's say, an emo means an overly emotional person, to be an emo, that stereotype typically means you are depressed a lot, you wear a lot of black, you're not very social, you don't have a close group of friends. You listen to hardcore music. That's kind of what a stereotype is. There's too many of them.
What do you think of stereotypes? I think they're too common, that people use them too lightly and use them without thinking about how that other person might feel based on that stereotype.
I think stereotypes can be negative, but now a lot of people kind of just play their stereotypes off and joke about them.
I think that they are closed-minded. I believe that everybody is significantly different than what their culture may actually intend. I believe that it's unnecessary, but at the same time, it is perpetuated in our culture.
I think it's really sad that society has created labels for people because, quite honestly, people do not meet up to stereotypes to a T. Everybody is different. Everyone's unique in their own way. And, you know, some people could probably say to me, oh, well, you're a prep. Well, no, I don't meet under that at all. You know, just because I dress a certain way doesn't mean I have that personality. I think I'm a really great person. And to me, when someone calls me a prep, I feel like preppy people have this certain personality, and that kind of ties into how stereotypes are a specific label for people. I just think it's sad because there are so many different types of people out there.
Are there any stereotypes that come to mind when thinking of the word? Yes. There's the, oh, you're a black female, you can't have depression or anxiety, you just have a bad attitude stereotype. There's the, oh, you're smart, but you're not Asian.
Yeah, definitely. Stereotypes like how Asians are always chinky. I've gotten that many times in my life. Or how African Americans are ghetto. Or how some Caucasians are so much of a typical white girl. It's just ridiculous, and it's used in social media and just everyday language. Like, it doesn't matter who that person really is. It's just a given misconception on how we view people who look alike.
Well, I just named two, emo and prep. There's also druggy, jock, nerd, for example. There's more than those. Those are probably the most well-known ones to society today.
It's funny because I was actually watching something about Japan where in their media, they get all their information about America. Like when they're portraying Americans, they have t-shirts that say F you on it, and everybody's all flipping the middle finger. Any stereotypes that come to mind? I guess American. I mean, you know, overweight at some point, drinking a Coke, you know, driving a big old car, toting around a gun. That's a stereotype I think of. Is it positive? No. But that's what we're perpetuating in our culture.
Do labels really define anyone? No, they absolutely do not. As I was saying before, you know, not everybody meets up to these labels, and I don't know why they even exist because they couldn't be any more inaccurate. I mean, maybe they're a silly thing to poke fun at people, but poking fun at people isn't nice either. So it's overall a lose-lose situation with stereotypes.
If you are a fisher and you fish, I guess that's a label and that counts. I mean, you can have a label and it not be a stereotype. You can have a label and it not be inherently bad, like the president. That's a label, but that's not inherently bad. We've had good presidents before. But labels really do apply to, say, like what culture thinks, and that may or may not be positive. So can it really define someone? Yes and no. It can define a job. It can define a certain idiosyncrasy, but it doesn't necessarily define the actual person.
Yes and no. Labels are more like tags that can define a base personality of a person. It's like when you go online and you type in action adventure, and then it pulls up like all these movies that are action adventure, but they have more to them than just those labels.
I think in small communities they do, because in a small town everybody knows who you are. If you do one wrong thing, instantly labeled. If you do a good thing, instantly labeled. But you're only labeled for a certain amount of time, and then you're forgotten when the next best thing of interest comes along. Have you ever experienced being labeled? Probably. I'm not gonna lie, but I really don't pay attention to that kind of thing, because why would I really need to pay attention to other people's opinions rather than the opinions of myself? Because I know who I am as a person. Other people may not, and at the end of the day, it's what I really think about myself, or the people who I really care about thinks of me.
Yes. There's the times when I'm like, oh, I like anime, and people are like, oh, that makes you an otaku. Which I'm not. There's, oh, you're pretty smart for a black kid. Really?
No, but in fact, my father, he is Caucasian, and in the area that we live in, we have a lot of little Hispanic restaurants. And in those restaurants, the owners actually try to get more tips from him because they believe he is rich. Just because he is Caucasian. And a lot of people believe that if they suck up to him, he'll pay them more. And, you know, I guess that's a form of being labeled based on your race, being a Caucasian male, that you are inherently rich.
Actually, no, I have not. I did give an example, but that was just an example. It wasn't, you know, an actual thing that happened to me. But in high school, I'm gonna make the whole like typical story that like everyone has probably experienced in their lifetime. In high school is really when you see everybody's true colors and everybody just goes into these different cliques, which there's where the label starts, is based on the characteristics of those cliques. So for example, I really was friends with everybody, so I didn't lie under any of those clique stereotypes, whatever the heck you want to call it. But there was this group of girls who were considered the preps / the jock girls, and then there was this group of guys that was the jock guys, and then, you know, there was a couple of, you know, people in my grade who didn't really have any friends, and they were considered the loners, and the people who would go across the street to smoke at the deli across the street were the druggies. So, you know, in high school, that's when you really, really see the stereotypes, is when you when you're in high school. I definitely think that's the primest example of stereotypes at its finest. Another thing I wanted to add to was with stereotypes, you know, it doesn't just apply to a type of person. There's stereotypes for male and females and how they're supposed to act, how they're supposed to dress, how they're supposed to look, have their hair done, have their face done. You know, if you're a girl, you're supposed to wear makeup and things like that. You know, it doesn't just apply to, you know, the cliques of high school, it applies to genders as well. And another thing too that kind of goes off of the gender stereotypes too, there's one thing that I literally can't stand. I grew up with a father who actually grew up telling my brother and I to be a man, and that's a phrase that I seriously hate so much. It's like you're telling somebody, be a man, be strong like a man. Like, who says that only men are strong, you know? I think that's a really silly thing to say, and especially for my dad to say that to like my brother, for example, you know, it's almost like telling my brother, stop being a wimp, stop being a pussy, like, suck it up. And I don't think that's okay, because that really screws up also as you're growing emotionally and psychologically. I think that could really mess with someone's emotions, really, and you get emotions confused. So if you're told because you're being sad to be a man, you're gonna grow up to think that being sad isn't okay. And when you try to be sad, it won't come out as real sadness. It's gonna come out as being angry or just being calm and collected. But, you know, it's things like that with stereotypes too that can lead to situations like that.
Have I experienced being labeled? Experience? Yeah, I experience every single day. You know, being the way I talk, my certain accent. You know, it's just fun and game jokes around. But sometimes I do get, you know, annoying when people do it too much. End of the night when I'm tired, I don't feel that. I don't know, jokes about, you know, my ethnicity. I mean, but it's cool to just once in a while or sometime. It's cool. One time, I think this guy was making fun of my ethnicity, and I think I physically punched his face once because of. It was just like, I told him, do not do it one more. I seriously gonna punch your face. And I did, I snapped. And I think it's like a layer. I don't feel that day. I guess I wasn't feel good. And I was sent to the principal. The principal understand because he has an African American son. His son did the same thing. But yeah, I don't know what to say. Just stereotype is there. But that's why it's so great about different colors of people. You have different type of viewpoint, different culture, different art. Appreciate the culture, but jokes around. It's cool, but not in a negative way. Appreciate it, I guess. Or even, like the guy shot the gay club. Although they're not a race, gay people is not a race, it's just how they, I don't know, it's still a stereotype to that group of people. And I think it's not right to, you know, shoot up a place, taking someone's life away because they are a certain way. I don't believe that. But joking around, it's cool. It's just not, I don't know.